Thank you so much for coming. I'm Stephanie Griffin. I'm the Executive Director of ACMP. And very thrilled to welcome you to this session about Jamulus and to introduce Mike Tietz and Tom Frenkel. Mike is going to give a presentation. And here's Mike, he's spotlighted. And Tom is going to be available also to answer your questions. I'm going to and chime in as necessary.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, Tom. And it's great to see. I see we have 76 participants. First of all, I'm delighted to be able to talk to fellow musicians about Jamulus. As you can see, I'm a cellist. I also play a couple of other instruments. I'm an ACMP member. I've also been on Jamulus since last May, thanks to Tom, who first introduced me to it. And I've been playing on Jamulus at least several times a week for the past 9 months. So it's been a wonderful, it is a wonderful experience and a way of making music to everybody. I'm going to give an overview for about 15 minutes, just about Jamulus basics. We'll have a couple of diagrams on the screen. We'll have a short snippet of video so you can hear what it sounds like when people actually use Jamulus, and then we'll open it up for questions and stay as long as people have questions. Okay, so what is Jamulus? Jamulus is an online music software program. It's a free download available over the internet, and it enables you to play with others that are distant in their own homes, in their own studios, over a wide area. I regularly play with people in a 300-mile radius from myself, and as a matter of fact, occasionally play with people in the center of the country, near Chicago, Minnesota, and even from Seattle. So this stuff works. As you all know, in terms of the difficulties of making chamber music remote, as any of you who've tried Zoom know, there's a lag or a delay called latency because of the way that audio sound travels. Tom's an expert on that. And so if you have a delay in my sound going out and then your sound coming back, that's what causes it to be impossible to sing happy birthday with somebody else on Zoom. Okay, there's probably about a half a second to 3/4 of a second delay on Zoom, give or take. That's equivalent, by the way, if you think of milliseconds, to about 500 milliseconds for half a second, or 750 milliseconds if you think about 3/4 of a second. All right, just a little technical stuff. On Zoom, the Jamulus, the important thing is you can get that delay down to 50 milliseconds, about a 20th of a second, which makes it possible, or better, I get better times than that, makes it possible to play chamber music in very close, essentially real time. And it works. So how it works. Stephanie, can we have the first flow chart? Just want to give you an idea of what the Jamulus software is, what it does, and where you and your fellow chamber musicians kind of fit. So, you know, don't worry about all the boxes. Basically, you can see the happy violinist or violist playing on the left side, right? And so his or her setup, okay, it's probably her setup, is you're connecting to a laptop. This is the basic setup. If you have a Mac, a Windows, or Linux computer, and it works on all three, you have a built-in microphone, at least on most laptops. Desktops, no. Laptops, yes. So your sound goes in to where it says mic in, and then in each laptop or desktop, there is what is called an audio driver. Okay, and the audio driver is what controls the sound. And the issue is, and a big issue for a lot of us, is that a lot of audio drivers don't really have the capacity to allow for low latency chamber music playing, low latency audio. Mac computers do, Windows do not. That will become important depending on your setup. Jamulus client, that's really you. Okay, so that's your laptop on, that your sound's going in. Then you have to connect Jamulus with an Ethernet cable. You must be hardwired on Jamulus in order to play. Ethernet cables are readily available. They're cheap. Cost between $5 and $10 depending on the length. And you connect your computer via a laptop or a desktop to your router where your internet service comes in. Okay, and so Ethernet cable to your router or modem. Now, here's what. Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm working upstairs and the router is downstairs, so I have actually a 50-foot Ethernet cable and it works fine. So, and that only costs like, I don't know, $10, $15. So you can be somewhere else in the house and use a longer cable, and that seems to work pretty well.
Right. We have talked about that. Matter of fact, I know somebody I just got onto Jamulus last week has a router. Sorry?
No, telecom.
Okay, but I'm going to keep going on.
Come on, leave it.
All right, then we have, okay, so we're talking about the router and the Ethernet cable. What Jamulus does, and you connect to the internet. I don't know why the T is missing there, but it should be there. And that's the cloud. And so then you connect to what is called a Jamulus server. And we will see the Jamulus servers. That's what this software does. Lets you connect through your laptop, through your router, to the internet, to a Jamulus server. You get to pick a Jamulus server, and that's where you meet other people online. This will become clear, okay, very soon. Look at the person on the bottom, I guess, a singer, okay, that happens, or any other instrument, it depends what emoji I was looking at. Same thing, they connect to their laptop or PC with a driver, right? And they're the Jamulus client. They connect with their Ethernet cable to their router on the bottom. They connect to the internet and they find you on a Jamulus server. Question, does it matter who your internet provider is? Sometimes it does. Most folks I know have Verizon, they have Comcast. There is one person I know that has a very slow internet provider. And we talked about that last week when I was getting her online. She's got actually a better internet service coming into her house downstairs. So she's going to get a 100-foot long Ethernet cable to connect to that particular router. So, but in general, if you've got one of the major, internet services coming in, you're fine. Stephanie, can we go to the next flow chart? Okay, yes. Okay, so Kathy, that's to everybody. Internet on an audio interface. All right, the setting flow chart I just showed you was for the basic setup. When I first got onto Jamulus last May, I was using a Dell Windows laptop with a built-in microphone and with a very small speaker, headphone thing. And I was able to connect to Jamulus on that kind of device. All right, so the efficiency wasn't that great. There's another software download I had to do, but it worked. So you can do that. It is easier on Mac computers than it is on Windows computers. Mac computers have very efficient audio drivers, and it's a lot easier to connect on Mac than Windows, but you can do it. Tom.
Yeah, you mentioned headphones, but I think it's important to, I think you really need like good closed over the ear headphones to keep a lot of your own sound out of your ears. So that's I think an important piece of it.
Yeah, we'll talk about the setup. I actually have all of my equipment back there, and I'll bring it up to the camera so you can actually see it. Okay, once we get this done. So the only difference, there is something called an audio interface. All right, and we're not going to spend, the only difference is that is a very efficient little box that a lot of you may have heard of that actually has its own drivers that are more efficient, certainly for Windows, than Windows drivers. And you actually connect to the interface, and then you connect the interface with a USB cable to your laptop or desktop. All right, that's all I want to say about that. It does make the experience much better. I use an audio interface. Tom uses an interface. This is what the audio interface looks like. It has all these connectors in front. it makes the experience much, much better. Audio interfaces cost anywhere between $100 on up, but you know, mine is like $110. You know, but we'll talk about the equipment in a bit. All right, so now you see how Jamulus works. You have your own input into your mic. You go through your laptop or desktop to your router, to your internet, to your server, and then in the server, it mixes with the sound from the other person who has joined you on that server. And then the sound comes back to you. All right, that back and forth, you know, there is inevitably a delay in between your sound going into Jamulus and the other person's sound going into Jamulus, and then it coming back to you. That is what I was talking about in terms of the latency. You can get that overall round trip, the overall delay, down to below 60 milliseconds, down to 50. In my case, sometimes I get mid-30s. So I can really hear people almost like that. All right, so that's what it does. So let's see what Jamulus can do. So Stephanie, if we could tee up the Concordia String Quartet, don't start it yet. Okay, I want to tell people about this. I got very excited last May when I first got onto Jamulus, because at that point, we first started to get indications that people could actually perform on the internet and record themselves. The important thing about Jamulus also to realize is it's audio only. You cannot see your other chamber musicians. Now, I would like to see Tom very much. Nice seeing him now. And Stephanie as well. And I've played with both of them online. But think about Jamulus as playing a string quartet in a room with your backs turned to each other. It can be done. You basically, when you start Jamulus, you either count off, or as I prefer it in my groups, you do the violin sniff. So you do, right? And that's how you start. Right? So that's how you're able to play with people, and it works, and you can speed up and slow down, especially if you are experienced, if you've looked at the piece in advance. So let's see, Stephanie, what a professional group can do. This is a group from Singapore called the Concordia String Quartet. They recorded a live performance on Jamulus using Jamulus audio, but then they also had a separate Zoom feed, not in sync, and they weren't listening to each other. Look at all of them. They have their headphones on, right? What you can't, and they have microphones. I think some of them may be using microphones on their instruments. Some of them, I think Edward, the violinist, there may be a microphone, near the scroll of his violin that he's playing into. So Stephanie, let's hear about 30 seconds of what you can actually do on Jamulus. Okay. So thanks. That's great. That was just great. So that is quite remarkable. I was blown away when I heard that last May. Big viola, yes. And it was, that is the kind of sound you can get. Now, they weren't looking at the camera. They were listening to them. They were listening to each other through Jamulus. So let's, I think, go to talk about the basic equipment needed, how to install it, basic setup, and then the more advanced setup. And then we'll take your questions. Right, Stephanie, the note from Stephanie is really important. In terms of equipment, ACMP has a discount with a firm, an online store, electronic store called sweetwater.com. I have used them since last May. They are terrific. They have excellent prices, and they actually know something about the equipment that they're selling you. It can give you good advice. And they've done that for Tom and me and a lot of others. So,
excuse me, sorry. Did you tell me recently you have to speak to a certain person there to get the discount, or how does it work? I'm not sure.
The information is actually up on the member discount page of ACMP. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I've spoken to our friend Henry very recently to buy another instrument, an electronic instrument, and the discount works, and it's very nice. So I'm thinking at this point, Stephanie, why don't we put the manual, the Jamulus for chamber musicians up? This is a document that was prepared last summer originally. And by the way, I see a note from Gail Rich. Yes, it works on Windows 7. Okay, but we'll go through it. This says it was revised last July. Tom and I and another friend of ours, Bruce Kinmonth, who is an excellent violist who we regularly play with, we put this manual together as kind of a hopefully quick and easy introduction to Jamulus. So it is, Stephanie, I think it's available on the ACMP website, or there's a link to it.
Yes, I put it, I wrote an article about Jamulus, which is showing up on the front page along with two other articles, one about Jam Kazam and one about the online chamber music classes archive. And within that article is a link to this. I'm also going to send a follow-up email to everyone with a bunch of links.
Okay.
After today's call.
Right, and as you can see from the first page, I'll ask Stephanie to scroll down. Our friend Bruce does have a nice sense of humor. So yeah, it's not Marmite, it's not raspberry puree, it's called jam. It came from really the concept of mostly rock musicians jamming with each other over the internet. Okay, so it goes through a lot of the stuff we just talked about in terms of the latency. Okay, so let's go to the second page right there. What do I need to use Jamulus? 4 things. Okay, and I said 5 if you're really counting. You need a computer, a laptop or a desktop with a microphone. Important for PC users. A webcam is not going to work. Okay, I have looked, I have tried, that doesn't work. So laptops are really good for this, especially Mac laptops. Windows laptops will work, but you're going to need an additional download that we'll get to in a sec. Okay, there are 2 free internet downloads. One is the Jamulus software, and the other, especially for Windows computers, remember I talked to you about the Windows driver. That's not very efficient. The sound driver does not support low latency audio. There is a free driver called ASIO for all. Audio sound in out for all. Okay, that's what that stands for. It provides low latency, high fidelity interface between Jamulus and your computer sound card. Basically, it takes over the sound of your computer when you go onto Jamulus. All right. So basically, you install Jamulus. The links are there. There's a special website. There's a website for Windows. There's a website or a separate link for Mac. Okay, and we actually updated recently the Mac, installation page link. Okay, you need headphones. Do not use. Wait, just 1 second, Tom. Before I forget, headphones. Headphones are important. Do not start Jamulus on a laptop without your headphones plugged in, please.
And I think basically they should also be wired, like connected with a cable, and not Bluetooth. And
not Bluetooth, yes.
Not wireless, because that may introduce other kinds of delay there.
Okay,
with a wire, plugged in with a wire.
Okay, so here are my headphones, right? Right, here's the plug. Now, a lot of these headphones, when you have a Mac or when you have a laptop, they'll have this kind of small plug that you can just plug right into it. But for an audio interface, you'll need this 1/4-inch plug. These kinds of studio headphones come, as you can see, with the right plug, and then you can unscrew it and use it with either type, laptop or an interface.
Yeah, for my interface, I use a little adapter thing that plugs in, with a big end plugging in and the small end for the miniature stereo plug.
So here's the first thing. I just tied the wire up. Those are my headphones. You can use the microphone in your laptop, or you can use one of these, right? So the studio quality mic, again, this one costs about $100, $99 on Sweetwater, and a mic stand. And then, as mentioned, this is just a picture. You can look all these up online. There are many different kinds of audio interfaces. I use a Scarlett Solo Focusrite, so does Tom. And it has all of these controls in the front that let you better control your sound. All right, so you need those things. You need to download the software, either for Windows or for Mac. There are separate downloads on the Jamulus website. You need to download ASIO for All, which is, again, a free software download, okay? And there's a link to that. This is all in the manual. And then you download those things. And then actually, when you do that, you are ready to open up Jamulus, okay? So let's see. We've gone through those items. So Stephanie, I think you're able to open up Jamulus at this point.
I can.
Maybe we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should do that.
Stop share. I also want to interject just to remind people that if you are a Mac user, you do not need the ASIO for All. That's just for PC users.
Right.
So now I'm going to share the screen and show you Jamulus itself. Here it is. Does everyone see that?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I see that. I see the main, by the way, we see the main screen for Jamulus. I don't see the stuff on the top, but I guess you'll show it to us. So you get this gray box when you first sign into Jamulus. So Stephanie, can you hit settings on that, on the left side? Yeah. So there should be a separate settings box that opens up.
You don't see the settings box?
No, I don't see the settings box.
See it now? Oh, I'm gonna.
Right.
Okay, 1 second. It doesn't show.
That's right. That's right. By the way, I see a couple of questions have come in about the drivers and stuff like that. Let me just look in the chat. All right. So okay. So I know what's happening with Steph. So you're showing kind of like one box at a time. You saw in the big gray box that Stephanie hit the settings, the settings button. And by the way, this is just an overview. Once you get onto Jamulus, what you should really do is, follow the instructions, look for your settings. That's great. Okay, now highlight settings. As you can see, the settings box is one of your most important boxes. That's where you're going to set up your laptop or desktop for playing Jamulus. And it can be a little daunting, but it does work. And once you'll get to love it, once you get to know it. By the way, I'll put in a plug. There are a number of technology task force members on ACMP that can help guide you through the process and setting up Jamulus. I've personally gotten a lot of folks onto Jamulus, and I explained this box to them. But you can see on the left side, it says sound card device. You choose the device. For example, for Windows, if there's a drop down, you can see what's available to you. You can see the Zoom audio device. Do not choose that. Built-in microphone. At some point, there's also going to be your own card. Don't worry about it, Stephanie. That's fine. And then, so you choose your sound card. If you're using ASIO for All will show up there. You choose it. You'll have some further setup to do with ASIO for All that is not showing here right now. There's an ASIO setup at the bottom. You basically have to tell Jamulus what you're using for input, what you're using for output. How is your mic getting in? How is your sound coming out? Okay. And there will be some choices there. You can't see that on this right now. In the Jamulus for chamber musicians manual we put together, there are a couple of examples of that. Each person's setup is different. Okay, and this is probably the critical thing to getting Jamulus to work. All right. let's see, Ethernet to USB adapter, that is USB connector. Some modern computers don't have USB ports in that, or only have USB-C ports. There are various connectors to connect an Ethernet cord to it. There are various connectors to be able to connect to a USB port. Everybody's situation is a bit different. Very quickly, you have some settings on the left. They enable small network buffers and the jitter buffer. And those are kind of special things. I don't want to take the time now. Be aware, you'll have to set those to get the highest audio quality. There are a number of tricks in order to do that. That's what I kind of take people through the first time they sign on to Jamulus. And other tech task force members, of course, are also fully capable of doing that once you do a setup, okay? On the right-hand side, you can see audio stream rate, but the ping time and the overall delay tell you how your particular machine is connecting to Jamulus. How good is it in terms of ping time and overall delay? Stephanie, do you want to try and connect to the server list? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we might bring settings up after that. When you connect, this is terrific. This is live. Hey, I see we have an ACMP member who's on vocal ref bass. That's great. This is a list. Remember that list, that Jamulus server, kind of red icon we saw on the flow chart? This is a list of the available servers. A server is a place where you meet and play chamber music. And you can see right now live, we've got a couple of duos going on. Stephanie, can you go up to list and show the full range of the, okay. So you have, just click on it and keep that open. So you have a number of different server lists. I don't know that it really makes any difference which server list you go on. But there's a default list, an all genres list, genre rock, genre jazz, and then a classical folk choral. You can go, I've played on all of those. There's a custom list, but when you get advanced and you play in World Jam concerts like I'm doing right now, then you go to custom. But if you go to click on classical folk choral. All right, and yeah, take your cursor. Let's see, where did that list go? Okay, so now, okay, that's fine. Just hold it there. You can see a couple of things, the server name, and you can see the people who are on the server. They've all set up their profiles. By the way, a Jamulus profile, once you're online, takes about 5 seconds to do. You put your name in or your alias, and people have aliases. Right. Thank you, Stephanie. She's showing how the profile. So that's Stephanie's. She has a nice alias, ACMP Stephanie. Her instrument, there's an instrument drop-down list, the country, the city, and the skill, okay? They don't have all of them down there, right? There's no theremin or bagpipe listing, which I would really like, but it's enough, okay? And then you set your profile, okay? And yeah, why don't you close the profile? That'd be great. So what happens when you get onto Jamulus, and this is with respect to Stephanie's machine, you can see the ping time. The time it takes Stephanie's machine to connect to the internet is 9 milliseconds. Really small, okay? 9 milliseconds for a ping to reach wherever her internet provider connects for that particular server. Jamulus basically has all of these servers arranged in the best ping time order for you. Can you scroll down that list, Stephanie? Yeah. And you can see all of the different ping times, all right? And you can see where all these servers are. United Kingdom, Netherlands, Frankfurt. There are servers in Australia. There are servers in China. Okay, now you can see that the ping times turn red, like an 87 millisecond ping time. So I can connect to that server, but I really won't be able to play with them. All right, what you really want to look for if you go all the way, okay, so Jakarta, Indonesia, I have spoken to people in Australia over Jamulus, so you can talk to them, but if you try to play, it's like doing a Zoom thing. Remember again that Zoom, we talked about half a second delay, 500 milliseconds. Even to Jakarta, the ping time is better than that, 297 milliseconds. But you add in other delays, it'll be probably well over 300 milliseconds, so it's too far away to play. Why don't you go all the way back to the top? Okay, what you're looking for is you're looking for servers that are bright green as much as possible close to you. So in Jamulus, you can basically play, I play with people in a 300-mile radius very comfortably. I'm in Westchester, New York. I play with people in Massachusetts. I play with people in Washington, D.C., Burlington, Vermont, in Virginia. And that's very comfortable. I also, because I have actually some special equipment, I'm running a Linux machine with my interface. So I've got some pretty good times. I can get some very good times to Chicago, and that's where I meet people from the West Coast or the Midwest. Stephanie, can you bring up a server and then do the settings?
Oh, Mike, I believe you have fiber optic connection. The rumors have it, the word has it that does better than cable, but they both work. But if there's a choice, probably fiber is better.
I think that's right. So yeah, a lot of the servers, by the way, are set up. The servers are set up as a public service by people who want to play on the internet, and they let everybody play on them. It's an open architecture, so you can actually go into a server and listen to somebody else playing. I always tell people when I guide them, can you do the settings, Stephanie? Thanks. When I guide them on, great. That's what I wanted to see. When I guide them, I say, okay, if you listen on to somebody else's session, that's fine. So you get to see what people are playing, but be polite and respectful. Don't talk. If they talk to you, then you talk back. And the nice thing about Jamulus is I have met people on Jamulus. One of the major groups, folk groups I'm playing with right now, I listened in on their server in Minnesota. Was a long delay, but they said, hey, Mike, cellist, you want to jam with us? I said, okay.
Mike, if you're listening, it's probably polite to click on the mute myself thing on the lower left of the settings.
Right.
It's actually turned on, I guess, not as you're looking at it on the screen, but yeah, that way they won't hear any noises you make when you listen.
Right. I think that's well taken. And I always tell people when I bring them onto Jamulus, I tell them what the protocols. Let's go back to settings very quickly. That was important. So Stephanie is on a server right now. Now, here's what you can see. The audio device it says Zoom, but it's not really going to work on Jamulus at this point. The enable small network buffers and all of these connection things, that's something that you experiment with. Basically, you check that box, enable small network buffers. It has to do with how efficiently sound is being moved. Packets are being moved back and forth. Go with the preferred 5.33. Again, that will be set up already. The most important thing is look on the right-hand side, the ping time and the overall delay. The ping time for Stephanie is varying between 8 milliseconds, 9 milliseconds, 7 milliseconds, that's good, and 15. All right, that's an excellent range. And then the overall delay, which is the round trip of her sound to the server coming back, is 39, 40, 37 milliseconds. Excellent time. You can play string quartets with that. Okay. Anything under 50 milliseconds is good. And that button on the right-hand side will be green. Once it gets above 50 milliseconds, it turns yellow. And above a certain level above that, 60, it's going to turn red. And that really means it's not optimal to play. So this is an excellent setup. It depends on the server that you choose. Yeah, you can close that out, right? There's a lot of other stuff on that box, but frankly, that's what the Jamulus Sherpas take people through, or you learn what that all means. I don't want to take the time now to do it, but that's a graphic illustration. Yeah, we can disconnect and go back to the screen. That's a graphic illustration of what Jamulus is, what it does, the sound you can get, in terms of the Concordia, the coordination. We chose that snippet because those were people playing in Singapore. They weren't that far from each other, but they weren't in the same room. They were within a 20-mile radius of each other, so they had good ping times and delays. But the coordination was pretty impressive. By the way, later on in that same recording, which is available, by the way, on the internet, it's on YouTube. Look at Concordia String Quartet on YouTube. You'll see that recording. It's about an hour long. The musicians actually talked about what it was like to be on Jamulus and what it was like to rehearse using Jamulus. And actually, I think they played a movement of the Borodin second string quartet. Very nice. So you can hear romantic music, speed up, slow downs, everything else. So I think we've already talked about the fact that you can use your basic laptop, Windows, Linux, Mac, right? And Macs are easier, but you can do it on all of them. I've only done it on Windows. We've talked about the equipment. You can see one of my other instruments is back there, a theremin. And on top of it, I have my audio box, my microphone and my headphones that I use to connect to another smaller computer on the side. So I think we've done the overview, Stephanie, and we're now ready to open it up to questions. So the topic Stephanie and I came up with, and then I'll stop talking so much. Thank you for indulging me. Questions about downloading, setup, equipment needs, how to do it without equipment. We've already covered it, but you may have other questions. Optimizing latency and sound quality, public and private servers, and finding players, which Stephanie can help you with a lot. And then any other questions.
There are already quite a few questions on the chat, as you may have noticed.
Okay, so
Yep.
Stephanie, how do you want, should I look at the chat and we'll take those questions?
I think what we can do is we could start with the questions in the chat, and also, Janet Hoffman has raised her hand as well. Let's start with Janet.
Okay,
Raise your hand. So I just want to remind people that there's two ways to ask a question. If you click on the reactions button on the right side, you click on it. If you have the raise hand option, you can do that. And make sure you unmute yourself, because I can't unmute you. There. So Janet, do you want to ask?
Yeah, hi, Stephanie, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
I'm doing a lot of playing on Jamkazam with some folks that are already on here, but I wanted to know a lot more about Jamulus. We have a few questions I know that have come from people that I play with. But the question I have for you, I think for everybody's benefit, I definitely use the focused, the Scarlett Solo interface. And
Right.
successfully, it's wonderful with the Ethernet to the whole 9 yards with connected to the router. But when you were discussing the ASIO 4A11, okay.
Yeah.
I know it's certainly on settings on Jamkazam, you have to eliminate that. So what I'm saying, if people download that ASIO driver, does that, but no, what I'm saying, I use the Focusrite. Does that supersede the ASIO? I don't use the ASIO.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And by the way, I will answer, and I'm sure Tom will answer all the questions that we can. If we don't know, we'll tell you that too. Okay. And I can have some other places where you can get answers. So ASIO for all is meant for a basic setup using a Windows computer. It's meant to supersede the Realtek audio driver that almost all Windows computers come with that doesn't allow for low latency audio. When you use a Focusrite, okay, audio interface, or any other kind of audio interface, Focusrite, PreSonus, Steinberg, there are a couple of them out there, number of them out there. Basically, you download that audio interfaces software. So for Focusrite, it's Focusrite USB ASIO. It will show up in the sound card drop-down list, and you choose it. It doesn't matter if you have ASIO for all as one of the choices. Whatever you choose is what the computer and Jamulus will use for your sound. Okay, so for example, on my desktop PC, and I had to get a new one, long story, recently, and I set up Jamulus again on that just to have an extra machine for Jamulus. I downloaded ASIO for all and I installed it, and then I installed the Focusrite USB ASIO software. And when I use my audio interface and plug it in, it's either automatically set to Focusrite for the sound device, or there's a drop-down list. If ASIO for all shows up, I do the drop-down list and I choose Focusrite USB ASIO. That's it. That's what it plays off of. Next question.
Thank you.
Should we go to, let's go back and forth between the chat and raised hands.
Sure.
The chat, we have a bunch of questions here.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see the questions, by the way, from the top as well in the chat.
Oh, good. So do you want to start with, I guess a lot of these questions have been answered by people.
Yeah, a lot of them have been answered. Let me just go. I can go through them quickly, Stephanie, if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, there are genres on the list of servers. This is from Alan Firestone. How can we see the list of classical servers? Well, you saw it. You do the drop-down list of servers on Jamulus. And by the way, you can play on the default server list. There are lots of servers there. I think they just named them because a server list can only have so many servers. They have probably, my guess, Tom, between 50 and 100 servers on each of the lists.
I'm not sure of the numbers.
Yeah, I once counted them. Okay, but you know, each of the lists, some of the lists, the most popular ones for us will be either default, all genres, or classical. I mean, the folk and the jazz ones, there are not that many servers on there. I haven't used them. Okay, let's see. Yes, one of the things you have to do, the question is, go into your Windows privacy settings, see if you're, okay, that's a Zoom thing. But one of the things you have to do as part of the setup, and this has been an issue I've seen in Macs and in PCs, you basically not only have to set up Jamulus, you have to go into your own computer sound settings to make sure that your computer recognizes that Jamulus can use your programs, and this is different for each Mac or Windows PC. Macs in particular have a privacy setting and a sound setting. You have to go to both of them. There are special things on online about what you do with Macs to make sure that Jamulus can access your microphone and your headphones.
I
So
show people for a second. Let me try to share screen and show you because I'm on a Mac.
cool.
I'm sharing my screen, and you see the little apple there? Do you see that? I'm going to close Jamulus now. Do you see the apple?
Yeah,
Okay, so then you go to System Preferences, and then
this is for Macs. Yeah.
and you see this little box that comes up. It's either in sound and it's sometimes in privacy. Let's try privacy first. Yes, allow the apps below to access your microphone. And I've got Reaper, Google Chrome, Kazam, Console, Skype, Jamulus, Zoom. So that's where that is. And that's very important to check before when you add a new thing. It stays like that, but every now and then you'll have a glitch and it will somehow remove itself. So if you have a problem, go to security. And then sound, I've never really had to do this, but sometimes if it's not, sometimes if it's not reading it, it could be the computer overriding Jamulus. You just want to make sure, you choose here. I usually have a USB box. I don't have it plugged in, but there you choose it.
What's the, Stephanie, can you go to input?
Yeah, input. Right now I'm on internal microphone.
But if you have your audio box plugged in, I assume you'll have something that shows the audio box.
Yes, and another thing, so that does show up. And when you go to output, you can also select aggregate device. And so that's if you're using one thing for input and one thing for output. So those are just handy things to look at. And I just want to say one more thing about Macs before we go on. And it's in the instructions, and I'm going to send you guys all links afterwards. But the link that's in the manual that Tom and Mike and Bruce made, there's a link specifically about Mac. There's only one difference that you need to know that's in there, and it's very prominent on that link. When you start to download Jamulus, Mac doesn't want to open it. And so you'll download it, and then you need to go into your applications, and then you need to. I could try to show you that, but I'm not.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Sometimes you'll need to do that in your antivirus, or your Defender wall, and that's the case in Windows. This is public source software.
Yeah, but for Windows, I mean, for Mac, there's a little trick. And they tell you in that thing, when you click on it, basically you have to right click on it and it'll give you a different way of opening it. So when you first try to when you download Jamulus, it'll download okay. And then you'll go into your downloads and you'll double click on it and it will say it can't open it. What you do is you right click on it and it gives you a different open menu, and that's how you open it. But that's all explained on that link in the manual.
All right, now that is for Mac. For Windows, what happens, and I've experienced this quite a number of times, first time you download Jamulus, you all have antivirus, of course, on your PCs, right? Oh, yes. And they're always suspicious of, as Macs are, of public source programs. Who knows who's written them, but we know who wrote this. So basically, it asks you for permission to open it. And sometimes I've had to actually go into my antivirus. And once I've downloaded it, the Jamulus program and it doesn't let me open it, I have to actually make it as an exception to my antivirus so it won't stop it from downloading. Everybody's setup is a bit different, okay? By the way, I've seen a couple of questions come in Tom's answer just now.
Yeah.
You must use Ethernet, as we said. Most folks have Wi-Fi and Ethernet on their machines. I haven't run into this problem, but Tom has. So where he, before running Jamulus, makes sure his Wi-Fi is turned off, right, Tom?
Well, I'm not sure I literally had a problem, but just for safety's sake, just to guarantee there's no conflicts, yeah, turn off Wi-Fi.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, there's a lot of issues I'm thinking about that we've come across. Stephanie, go ahead.
I was saying we should start taking questions from people who raise their hands as well. And
Go
actually,
ahead.
I highly encourage, by the way, this is not a webinar, so I don't have the Q&A button. But it is actually a little easier if you raise your hand using the little emoji if you have it.
Yeah, by the way, I've got time. We'll get to your questions, okay? So whatever questions you have, to the extent we can answer them. I'm not doing much today, so what the heck?
Okay, how about Carol? Do you want to ask your question, Carol?
Yes, thank you for putting this all together, Stephanie, Mike, and Tom. I'm in LA. Now,
Cool.
what is happening is, have you guys looked at SoundJack at all? Because I've been now playing with people locally. I have 4 different people I'm playing SoundJack. SoundJack appears to be very similar to Jamulus, going through the whole same setup. I'm averaging about 30 milliseconds, and we run through all of the different things. So I'm just curious, because I did write your main office, because I did put myself out as a SoundJack available person, but I see it seems to be Jamulus.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Message. Oh, interesting.
I'll make one observation and turn it over to Stephanie. There are a bunch of online low latency programs out there. Jam obviously is a big one, which has now gone to a subscription model, but thanks to ACMP, there are discounts available. Jamulus is free. I've heard of SoundJack. I've heard of Jack Trip. Okay, one can get on any variety of those. I just want to, I'm happy with Jamulus, which is why I'm staying on there. Sorry, who asked the question again? That was
That's Carol.
Carol. So
Yeah,
Carol,
SoundJack is free.
Yeah, how close are your folks to each other?
Oh, right now everybody's here local in Los Angeles. But when I do a test I don't know where I guess the local host is mine. I mean, it's usually 21 milliseconds.
Yeah, it's excellent.
But they're based in Europe, wherever SoundJack is. So I'm gonna try to reach out to somebody. I've yet to go on cross country myself yet. So that's one reason I'm trying to find people, because right now, but I will go look into Jamulus, because I'm so familiar with the setup. It's very, very similar. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no problem. I mean, the thing about, by the way, I think each one of these online, low latency setups, they each have maybe a slightly different culture, I'll call it. The thing I like about Jamulus, as you saw when Stephanie put up the server lists, is that you can listen in on other people. You can meet people online, which I have done. I've met quite a number of players, and I could be playing every single day of the week on Jamulus. Seriously. So there's that aspect. It's open architecture. Now, one thing, then we'll get to the next question, or Stephanie, if you've got a comment on SoundJack and these others first.
Actually, my only comment is, Carol, if you could write me, because I didn't get your message. If you write me directly at sgriffin@acmp.net, because I actually, one of my goals is to learn more about all of these platforms. The main reason why I've been doing a lot of, offering information on Jamulus and Jamkazam is that's where we have the critical mass of people. But I would really love to know more about that. Great. And so let's go back and forth between raised hands and chat. Should we do that?
Yep.
If anyone in the chat, let's see, where's the new questions here? What are the next? Oh yeah, one of the questions here. Can you use the same equipment for Jamkazam? And that's from Anne Brown. And I would say yes. I don't know if there's a few people here that have done both. I use the same for both. If anyone knows otherwise, if you want to unmute yourself and tell us. here, Paul Garnett to everyone. Once you have your setup complete and you are past the technical issues, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is playing in person, what rating would you give Jamulus? Ooh. Do you wanna-
Okay. Well, let's see. Hey, Stephanie, we just did duos the other night, right?
That was great. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, we did viola duos.
First time.
I would. What would you've got experience, Stephanie, on a number of these programs. Why don't you give your rating first? I'll give you mine then.
Well, my rating is, I would be uncomfortable giving a numerical rating because the truth is, I think we all know that nothing is a substitute for being in person with people. It's the same as, do you want to be in a Zoom meeting or do you want to be in a room where you can actually physically interact? Obviously, for me, in person's always better. But this is a great thing to do during the pandemic, of course, but I think even after the pandemic, this is kind of a lot of fun. Like I experimented, some of you were there. I did an open house New Year's Eve on Jam Kazam, New Year's Day on Jamulus. And we had at a certain point, we had someone in Germany, Joachim Landkammer, playing with us. We had someone in Florida, someone in Ohio. So sure, it's not the same experience. Like maybe it's a 7 or something. It's not the same experience because you have to deal with that. But when you get your sound right, and not just Jamulus, Jam Kazam, all of these, when you take the time, it takes a little patience. Because at the beginning of your session, everyone's got to sort of troubleshoot and get their mics going. And as you get more experience and you're playing with people with more experience, then you waste less time on that. But at first it's going to be a little frustrating because you're going to feel like you're troubleshooting more than playing. But once you get past that, I just think it's a lot of fun. Like it's a party. It's a big online music party.
Yeah. I've actually found it extraordinarily satisfying, and I'm doing stuff on Jamulus that I wouldn't be able to do real time. So, for example, Tom and I have been members of a string quintet, a viola quintet. We've been meeting every single week since June or something. So we've gone through every single viola quintet in creation. Well, we're finding new ones.
And we're playing with people. I'm sorry, we're playing with people hundreds of miles away, which normally maybe 1 or 2 weeks in the summer I'd play with it, but now it's like every week, we can get together and play. And plus I'm the kind of person who needs like a short-term goal to practice, and, working on music. I know I'm going to be playing in a few days is really a very good incentive for me to keep practicing. And so it's helping me in various ways, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, the sound quality, sometimes you get crackles, sometimes there's stuff that happens on the internet, so it's hard to achieve perfection in the sound, but there are times when it does happen. I mean, we were actually, the three of us, Stephanie, Tom, and I, plus 2 other players, we did bass quintets a week ago Friday. That was really cool. We played stuff that we had never even heard of before then, the Dvorak bass quintet, and then we found a Buccarini in IMSLP, which we played, and I just found another one, by the way.
And,
so, yeah.
Oh, what was I going to say? Go ahead. I forgot. I'll think of it in a second.
Should we ask you if she wants to ask her a question? She's the next in line.
Yep.
Oh, I know. It's just one. I've literally played like dozens of Jamulus sessions already, and I hope I'm not jinxing myself, but none of them has really been a total washout. There've been problems, 10-minute dropouts and, somebody falling out and coming back, but it's always kind of managed to work, like literally every single time. Not perfectly, even not always terribly well, but it's a very robust piece of software, I would have to say.
And if you have a problem on one server on Jamulus, if it's not working for somebody, you do a hyper jump to another server when all of you agree which other server you go on. And we do that a lot. And that's one thing that's really nice about the open architecture. Yeah, why don't we do our next question, Stephanie?
So Yin Yu, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so I'm Matthew, the husband of Inyu, and we're both enjoying this. She got me on this. I have a few notes for you. On the smaller notes, when it comes to, say, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi,
yes,
turn those off because those do cause noise. It's constantly pinging your router and stuff. Number 2,
by the way, that's both in terms of the Ethernet hardwired connection from your computer to your router, and especially for your headphones to your computer. Both have to be hardwired, right?
Yeah, but also go into your settings and shut Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off. They will cause feedback noise.
Yep.
So what I do is, my wife is a classically trained professional pianist, performance.
Ooh,
We do studio recordings, live performances. Now I do all the setup and audio. So this is very important for you guys.
okay.
So in order, at the rate that her ensemble plays, we're talking sometimes 120, 140, 160 beats per minute.
Yeah.
So I have about $50,000 to $60,000 of equipment when I record or perform live, because I need to keep the latency at 3 seconds, no more than 10, or you start to get some serious. They're playing notes so fast.
Yeah.
So in a live performance, I'm using $100 XLR balanced cables
Right.
into an Allen Heath that can control stuff at like 3 millisecond turnaround to the speakers. Or what you have is all kinds of latency noise. It's okay with slow tempo. Like if you start getting low latency, you could play at 50, 60 beats per minute because the latency, there's less time between notes. But if you start getting to her speed, where the fingers are moving, beyond fast you can see them, the latency is going to be an issue. There's no way you're going to get two pianists playing, at 140 beats per minute. They're not going to be able to stay in sync. You're going to require like 10 millisecond latency. That's very important to know. It's kind of a disclaimer. Like I always tell her, this is good, but don't expect what she hopes for is, getting on with another pianist and playing some at it, some Bach at 150 beats per second.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of things. By the way, where are you located?
We're in Weymouth, just south of Boston.
Ooh, can we get in touch at some point? I've been looking for a pianist like that.
Yeah. So the problem is, it's like,
but I will tell you, just to make it clear to folks, Tom and I actually played the first movement of the Mendelssohn D minor piano trio, right? Remember with a pianist in Western Mass, Tom? And right, it's Robert Finley.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Okay, so the piano part's pretty wicked in that. And Tom's in New York City. I'm in Westchester. He was in Western Massachusetts. We read the first movement of the Mendelssohn D minor piano trio, and it was fine. And yes, there's a lot of notes in that. Is it going to be a perfect concert performance? No, but it was certainly nice to be able to do that. The slower pieces are easier, but faster pieces are possible. I mean, think of the Mendelssohn piano quintet, Mendelssohn viola quintets and the fast movements or string quartets.
I think at least I sort of get used to like almost just thinking a fraction of a second ahead when I'm playing, and you sort of get used. You try to hear the sound coming back from yourself and the other people kind of in sync, and even with quite fast notes, very often I think if it gets locked in a certain way, the tempo, more or less usually stays the same for a while. So it kind of gets locked in, and I think that kind of works. So you have to learn how to do it. You have to learn how to do it.
The difference in playing in Jamulus, and then we'll go to the next question, I have found, right? Because from an audio, engineering perspective, of course, it's not going to be perfection. But one of the things about Jamulus and playing on it that I tell people is don't react and listen to the other person before you play. Play on the beat and make sure you're try to be slightly ahead, and it works. Your brain actually separates into two halves, audio audio sounding. And that's how we've been able to do it. So,
and I think that's why you need good headphones that see a lot the local sound. And when you use an interface, make sure that you turn off direct monitoring, because you don't want that. You don't want to directly hear what you're doing right in your room. You want to hear the sound coming back, so you turn off direct monitoring.
Yeah, we just had a question flash on the chat. Yes, what you're hearing is through your headphones from the Jamulus server. You're hearing the mix of everybody online coming back. Does that help, by the way? In terms of explaining, like I say, not right, Stephanie, not perfection, but pretty close enough for jazz, right?
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. Should we take the next question from Vivian Waters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. Is there a metronome function in Jamulus at all? Does it be particularly useful for contemporary work learning?
No, there isn't. I know that other programs may have like click tracks or metronomes or stuff, but no, Jamulus is just you get on, you play. If you want to do a metronome, turn on a metronome and put it close to the mic, and then you can all hear it.
Huh.
Jam
Right.
does, though, by the way. If you ever try Jam Kazam, there's a metronome on there built in.
Okay.
But I guess you could also put your metronome on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've never tried.
I've actually done that in sessions when especially with my folk rock group, and want to figure out how many beats per minute, what should our marking be. I take out my phone, put the metronome on, and hold it up to the mic. Everybody hears it.
Oh, Marilyn
Great.
commented that will affect latency. She's probably right, because the other person will hear your metronome a little later.
Yes, but it's good. But if you get a basic setting on the metronome, they'll be able to hear it and then set their own. So for example, we had a percussionist on the West Coast. We had a question about that. So he basically set his own metronome to the beat and was able to keep in time. And we did a World Jam performance a week ago where he was setting the beat and we were actually able to follow it. And I heard the result. It was pretty good. By the way, just one plug, we'll get to the next question, but one plug, there is every week on Saturday, there is a worldwide concert on Jamulus that is organized by folks in London, UK, called World Jam. And that World Jam, remember the Concordia Quartet with Jamulus audio and then Zoom video? They actually put together 20, 25 songs from people all over the world, including the US. I've played in 5 of them so far. I think I'm teed up for another one soon, where your group is assigned a slot. There's a studio, special studios they set up for audio, and then you turn on a separate Zoom video feed that you don't look at. And then the performance, they actually put it together in a YouTube video of the entire concert so people can see you, although it won't be totally in sync with your playing at the time. But they get it pretty close. They're all saved on YouTube. You can look at World Jam. If you go to World Jam on YouTube, you'll see them, and you can see what people are doing every week. I would love to get a classical group onto World Jam, but it has to be 4 to 6 minutes of music. Okay, so later. But just to give you an idea of Zoom and Jamulus and what that can do. Let's do the next question, please.
Okay, so the next question is Janet Hoffman again.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Are you
Okay.
muted? Where is she?
Janet, you want to unmute your mic, or is it in the chat?
I'm back. See, I don't want to take anybody. I know there are other people, but this is a question that's come up several times. On Jamulus, it's using the public servers.
Yes.
A lot of us have some concern with that for various reasons. It's unlike Jam Kazam, where you invite your participants in Jamulus, they can just, as you've explained, Mike and Tom, can jump in. What is the ability to start your own private server? How do you do that? And is it efficient?
Okay, a couple of answers. I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Tom, who has actually set up a private server. Jamulus has a capacity to connect to private servers over the internet. Okay, that's servers that people set up. A lot of them are set up on AWS or Amazon Web Services, but there are a number of other providers. There are varying degrees of success. I mean, basically, you can certainly do that. Tom has set up his own server, and we a lot of time meet on Tom's server. The thing is that the servers have to, be robust enough. I mean, basically, you connect using an internet address that the server owner gives you. So I've got Tom's server address in my Jamulus settings, and I connect to it, and it's fine. And a lot of times it works extremely well. What I found does not work that well is when people set up their servers like on their own computer. and then people connect to it. And that that does not work. Okay, the latencies are for everybody else are really not good, and for whatever reason, it doesn't work. Tom, I want to turn it over to you because you successfully set up a server.
Yeah, I'll send a link to what's I'm trying not to take it personally. It's called The Idiot's Guide to Setting Up a Cloud Server, and it's running pretty well. The trouble is you don't have much geographical, at least with Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services, you don't have much choice over where it is. So I picked the closest one, which is in Virginia, which doesn't work too badly for the New York area, but when we play with people up in New England, it seems to be kind of a little far. So I try not to get too offended if Mike suggests we jump off it and jump on a private one. I mean, on a public one. But the main reason I created the private server was just to make recording easier, because that way I have control over the recording files. I can download them and, you know, massage them in whatever way I want. That's a different subject, kind of. That's too specialized for now, I guess. But it was more for the recording capability than for the actual acoustic, nature of it, because the public servers work perfectly fine, you know, maybe even, like Mike said, sometimes actually better than the private ones.
Although last night, okay, a couple of things. First of all, Tom mentioned recording. A lot of servers on Jamulus have a record function where they will record your session, and then in various ways, shapes, and forms, you can actually get those recordings. Tom,
it usually involves, you know, emailing the person who runs the server and trying to be polite and nice about it. And sometimes I feel like I've overdone it just a little occasionally. So that's why I don't always, you know, it's a diplomatic thing, kind of.
Yeah.
You know.
The other thing is, and this gets beyond my technical expertise quickly, is that there are DAWs, or digital audio workstations. Reaper is very popular on Jamulus. People were basically route Jamulus through their digital audio workstation and record at the same time. Right? I don't do that, but a lot of folks do, and they're able to record and then download and share their sessions. But I will say, a plug for Tom's server, for example, is that last night, Tom and I did piano trios, and then I did theremin piano duos with the pianist on Tom's server. We were all in the New York area, and the connection was quite good. We did a Haydn piano trio, a Torino piano trio on the fly, and then I did some duos with the pianist. So that can work. But as Tom says, it depends. We know his servers in Virginia. When folks from Burlington, Vermont are connecting to it, or from Boston, it's several hundred miles further, and that can lead to some issues.
But,
so
if anybody wants to experiment, it's really very cheap. It costs me, I think, like $3.50 a month to have the server running, and it's like running all the time. So it's not going to break your pocketbook to try it.
Right.
Out.
There are also, and then we'll go to the next question. There are also instructions on the Jamulus website about setting up servers, and there are folks. There is a Jamulus mind hive worldwide of experts. And by the way, they were the ones who helped me get on when I was having problems last May with my Windows laptop sound settings. There are experts there who have all sorts of knowledge and expertise in setting up servers. Stephanie, what's our next one?
Our next question is Rochelle. Rochelle, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, mine actually is about servers as well. Some of it you answered, but mine is specifically more on the public servers. You showed delays and which one to choose, but are there rules? Like, is there a monitor or manager for each public server? How many times a week can you use the same server?
Okay.
How long can you stay on the server? And my final question about the public servers is there some number of people that you would play with that would then degrade the playing?
Okay.
I'll go now.
Okay, I'll try to answer those. I didn't write them down, but okay, so public servers. First of all, there's no time limit on a public server. The one thing about the servers are some of the servers will have welcome messages and from the people who set them up, and they'll basically tell you if they have any rules about their server. There's a group of servers that a lot of us use called Vocal Revolution. I've spoken to the webmaster, actually, the server master. Those are singing groups based out of Boston, Mass. But they set up the servers in New York, and they're wonderful and robust servers. They can accommodate each server, by the way, has a maximum size of musicians it can accommodate. The basic ones are 10 musicians. And the server won't let you in if there are already 10 musicians on, okay? But the vocal rev and other ones increasingly have 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, right? So there's no player limit as long as you don't exceed the server capacity. In terms of does the number of players make a difference? To some extent, yes, because each of the players has to have their settings at their optimum. So, your delay and somebody else's delay is compatible. You always choose a server depending on a compromise between where you're located. So whenever we all meet on a server and we decide, we say, what's your ping time? Is it between 9 and 20 milliseconds? It's generally okay. What's your overall delay? If it's below 50 milliseconds, it's okay. If somebody's at 60, we say, well, is there a better one that we should try? Either a more robust server or one that's closer, as a compromise to everybody. I always ask the folks in Boston, since my connect times are really good, what's the best server for you? And then we try that one. What are the other questions that you had about servers? I didn't write them down.
Okay, the only remaining one was, is there a rule like you can only use it sign up so many times a week?
Yes, okay, the welcome message is important, okay? Generally, there are no restrictions as long as the server is open. A number of servers, for example, the vocal rev servers that we classical musicians love because they're really great and close. They have choral groups that rehearse on Thursday nights, right? Between 7:30 and 10 on some of these. Those are very big, robust servers, and they actually have online rehearsals. So they as a public service, they're really great. They keep those servers open for everybody, but they respectfully ask that when they're rehearsing, that we leave that server and go someplace else, which we do. I've rarely had a conflict. We did once where we were going over into the rehearsal time. We saw other people were on board and we said, oops, let's jump to another server, which we did. Okay, so does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you. That's it.
And I'm still amazed how many unused public servers there seem to be at any given time. So don't worry about not being able to find one. It's like one of the mysteries to me, like how few of them seem to be getting used at any particular time.
Stephanie?
Yeah, before we go on to Henri's question, Henri's the next of the question, I wonder if I should screen share again quickly and show Jamulus, because there's a quick way to find the server menu when you want to jump servers. Should I just quickly show that?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Do that. So let me open Jamulus and then share screen, this guy. Oh, I'm going to share my whole screen. Sorry. Share whole screen. Do you see Jamulus there?
Yep.
Good. So when you're in Jamulus here, you know how I'm going to mute myself because I'm not wearing headphones. I'm muted. That's a good thing to do anyway. You can either do this and press connect or whatever, and then you connect. You choose a server with no people on it, or you choose a server with people on it if they're your friends, or you want to say hi or your whatever. But let's say we go here, connect. So I'm connected. Here's the welcome message, right?
Okay, so yeah, have a look at that one. So in return, so it tells what vocal rev is, right? They're located in Lexington, but their servers are in New York because that was they told me when I spoke to the webmaster that those are the best, most robust servers for them.
Yeah. And so here they tell you, that you need, that they respectfully ask you, not whatever. So, and you can choose to answer or not. I'm not going to write them. But let's say I'm in it. Now, the only option I have here is to disconnect. But if you want to hop servers, let's say you're having a problem with the server, or you're on vocal rev and a bunch of singers show up here at the top in the view menu, when you're in Jamulus, there's connection setup. So if it was Mike that showed this to me, so now you can open that same connection menu while you're connected to somewhere else. And you'll be like, oh, well, this server's not so great for me right now. Why don't I go to North Shoreman?
Yeah, so look, vocal rev baritone. Hold it for a second, Stephanie. So you see Stephanie, she's on vocal rev baritone. She's still on Jamulus. She can talk to anybody else on that server, right? Her friends, right? So now she's going to do what we call the Jamulus hyper jump to another server.
Yeah, so let's say I'm having problems or singers show up or whatever. Then let's say I'm going to choose this one, North Shoreman. I just highlight it and I press connect and poof. And then I get their welcome message. which it's also vocal revolution. Interesting. So I'm turning it off, and now I'm there.
Yeah, can you show the server list where you are so they can see it, because that's not showing up right now.
Okay, I'm going to do view again.
Yeah, that's fine.
Connections.
Yeah.
There you go. And now I have moved. So I'm here.
And it's instantaneous.
Yep.
And oftentimes, often she moved from vocal rev baritone to the other one. By the way, look at the if you just again for that server name, ping time, musicians. So it shows on North Shoreman, there's one musician out of 30. She could get 29 other musicians on there, right?
That's right.
40 musicians and some of the others, 50 on a bunch of them. So that's new. We normally didn't see that kind of capacity.
Yeah. So that's a useful little trick. So I'm gonna now.
Yeah, you can disconnect it all.
Yeah, I think that's. Oh, and by the way, when you're one thing that's cool about Jamulus that you can't do in some other places. Well, I only know Jam Kazam. You can edit your profile at any time. So
Yeah.
let's say today I'm playing congas, and let's say I want to call myself, I don't know,
ACMP conga.
ACMP conga. There you go. And I'm not an expert. I might even say none, but I'll say I'm a beginner. And there you go. Then I close it. Now, see that now they know that ACMP beginner level. That's why it's yellow. It is color coded.
Oh, okay.
And then if I decide, let's say I practice a lot, and next time I go on, I feel like I'm a little better, I change myself to intermediate, and I'm green. And that's another way too, when you're looking at the server menus, if you look at connection setup, let's say you only, you want to play, the colors don't show up until you go in, but if you go into someone else's, you can also see immediately what self-assessment of their level is.
Yeah, actually, I think is it on your name on the slider bar, Stephanie, on your ACMP conga?
Is it?
Have a look.
On the
I thought it was.
There
Yes,
it is.
see, there it is.
You could hover. I just hovered my mouse over it, or maybe I clicked. What did I do?
No, you hovered. You hovered.
I hovered. Well, I'll never be able to do it again. There it is. And then it says that. Yeah. And so in terms also, you can use your real name. You can not use your real name. Anyway, I'm going to disconnect and we should take Henri's question, but I just wanted to show you guys that.
Yeah. By the way, Stephanie, as long as we're there, I know that one question that has come up, I don't want to lose it, is how do you find other musicians on Jamulus?
Okay, well, there's a number of ways, and one thing I'm trying to do, by the way, and I've sent multiple emails out, and some people are starting to do it. I found that if you're an ACMP member and you put the word Jamulus or Soundjack or Sonibus or Jam Kazam or anything else in, there's two little fields of your ACMP profile that you can easily edit. One of them is what kind of music do you like to play, and one of them is what are you looking for. So if you add that word anywhere, then anyone can go in. Let me share screen for a second, because this is interesting. I'll show you the ACMP website for a moment. That's Jamulus still, sorry. Now you know that I'm a Yahoo user. Try to hide that.
Oh, wow.
Okay, here we go, ACMP. I'm not logged in, so this is good. I have to log in to use the directory, so I'm gonna log in. I'll just log in as me. I can log in as my cat as well. Here, I'm logged in, and when I'm logged in and I go to the directory, Find Players, which is in the Connect menu, which most of you know, you click on Find Players. And here you go, Find Players. This is one way you can do it. You can search by first name, last name, distance, use city, country. You can choose instruments. But there's also, see this sneaky little thing, Advanced Find? If you click on that, you can search by keyword. And I'm going to put Jamulus in here. And I'm sorry, privacy, some people's names are going to show up, but I'll take it off for a moment. And then click Find Players. And so it's taking a while. Everyone that has put that in their profile shows up, you see? Mark, Cyril, Edward, all you guys, a lot of you guys are here, show up, and then you can click on the person and get their contact info. And the number is, I'm going to stop the share now, but the number is growing. You could do that with Jam Kazam as well. And as more and more people do it, it's going to make it easier. We're now in the process of designing a new website. And so that is going to be one of the default things when you're signing up your profile. Do you play online, and a bunch of check boxes. So that's going to make it easier. The other way, I guess, is what Mike has been doing is Mike has been surfing the servers as well and meeting all sorts of strangers, which is also really fun.
Yeah. Although I will say, when I listen in on people and their groups, because a lot of times I just like say, okay, who's out there? Who's doing something? So I look at who's on the servers. Something looks interesting. I'll click on it. I'll make sure. And there are a couple of techniques to make sure you're not heard. I don't want to intrude on somebody else's session. I just want to listen. Sometimes I'll change my instrument to an ear. There's an ear icon in the profile. Or I'll certainly mute myself. But then if they speak to me, then I'll unmute myself and talk back. And so I've met some musicians that way. The other way is, there are people now playing online, and I've met some folks this way, where you play in a group, let's say playing a duo or a trio, and say, do you know somebody else? Do you know a violist on Jamulus, another one who could join us for quartets? I said, yeah, there's somebody up in Vermont. And this actually happened several weeks ago. It was a really good violist. Let me see if she's interested in joining us. And so we now have a quartet. So, it's kind of an informal networking thing that you do. And people start knowing other people doing these things. It kind of spreads out in concentric circles. So when we started out last May, it was Tom and me. We got we got Matthew on in Boston, our violinist. We got a violist on, and then we got a violist on, another violinist. We had a trio, and then we said, who else can we persuade to get onto Jamulus? And then we got our other violinist friend up in Vermont. He just brought his sister on, who's a cellist. We'll be doing sextets. So, there's that one at a time aspect of it too.
Oh yeah, and another, before we take Henri's question, another thing.
Oh, Epi DDS, is that?
Yeah, I played with you first, she says.
Yeah, clarinet, right?
Yeah, Jane.
Jane, yes, right. That was the first group, clarinet and cello, back in May, 9 months ago.
There you go. But another thing you can do, and this is something I'm going to ask people to do if on the weekend of the Worldwide Play-In on March 20th and 21st. I did this on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and it really worked. On Jamulus, you can change, as I showed you, you can change your profile name every day. On those days, if you put ACMP in front of your name, then other people can surf the servers like Mike always does. Mike has found me before. I was testing my box. He's like, hey. So Mike will find you. That's the thing. Mike is guaranteed to find you. But if you put ACMP Henri, ACMP Janet, ACMP whatever, then since ACMP is chamber musicians, even if you keep it, like it looks like Harvey, the cellist, has kept that on there. That's a cool thing, because one thing right now is Jamulus is being used more by pop musicians, jazz musicians, things like that, than classical musicians. So one of the big problems is finding other classical players. So if you want to just stick the word ACMP in there, then when we're on there, we can be like, oh, that's probably a classical chamber musician. I'd pop in and say hi. So that's a nice little trick.
Yeah. Although your instrument will also show up even if you don't put ACMP on it. Yeah. So your instrument will show up in parens, but ACMP makes it very easy to identify somebody who's in kind of like the same network. I know that there's a bunch of musicians down in Florida and Atlanta that I've played with, and I found them just by looking at the instrumentation,
Yeah, let's have Henri. Do you want to ask your question, Henri? You've been so patient. Here we go. Lower.
Hi, thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody, except here, it's evening. I think I'm the only one not in the US.
Where are you from? Holland or Belgium?
The Netherlands, yeah. Holland is a province. The Netherlands is a country. Sorry, Mike. My question is, have you experience with using a pickup instead of a microphone? Many of the audio gears have a plug for a mic and a plug for an instrument. And for the violin, there are many different pickups that you can buy. They are not very expensive.
Yeah.
And they connect to your bridge, or they are stuck to the top blade of the violin, for example.
Yes.
And is your experience that works better or worse than with a microphone? Thanks.
Yeah, okay. I personally I've not used a pickup on my cello. What I have done is I've connected my microphone so people can hear me talking, and then I have connected an electronic keyboard to an instrument jack going into Jamulus. And I now regularly connect my theremin using an electronic pickup, using an audio cable in, and that has worked very, very well. As a matter of fact, I've done a couple of tests on that, and it works better, at least for the theremin, than it does for, if I'm doing it acoustically.
Mike, excuse me, do you know if we play with anyone who uses a pickup instead of a mic on their instrument?
Not in our groups. I mean, Matthew has a microphone. Matthew has a microphone that is sometimes plugged near his bridge on the violin, right?
Oh, like the one in the video with the German viola.
Yeah. I am sure that some of my other folk group musicians do that, but I don't know specifically. The thing is that I think you want to have, and you're talking about a pickup going into a 1/4-inch audio jack on an interface, right?
If you see here,
I can't see you right now.
Oh,
then you have to switch page.
you know what?
And
I'm
then you
going
will
to
see
pin
me.
him. I'm going to add a spotlight. Here you go, Henri. You are.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you see the two tiny thingies that are squeezed in the bridge,
Oh,
Yep.
and that and then a little cable comes out,
Right. And where do you plug that into?
and so this is the cable that comes out of the pickup, and
Yep.
it goes into the bearinger.
Okay, yeah, and it goes into the microphone.
No, into the the plug is called instrument.
Yes, that does work. That does work. That's what I use on my Focusrite. I have an instrument plug right over here. As a matter of fact, this is the plug for my theremin from last night that goes into it, so I can speak into my microphone, right? The microphone here. At the same time, I'm playing my electronic instrument through my Focusrite. So the answer, I guess, the answer seems to be yes.
Because the advantage is that if you don't have a mic that is connected to your instrument, if you are a bit, I like to move while I play, and then if you use another mic that is close by,
Yes.
you make crescendos and decrescendos without wanting to do so.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of things, and Tom and I have discussed it, about using microphones for instruments. I actually looked up how to mic a cello on YouTube. Okay, and what audio engineers, and I know we have at least one on the call, use to mic cellos. So what I do, and I think it's important for folks, when you get a mic, if you have a standalone microphone, if you get this set up, make sure you get a 10-foot long audio cord, and make sure you have a microphone stand that is either, if you're doing violin, it's best to have the mic coming, so it captures the sound from the F hole. So I would always recommend a stand-up mic stand for that. For me, I use a desktop, so I put it where it's pointing right at the cello, at the bridge of the cello. So pointing, kind of, where the bridge is, right? Because that's where it's going to pick up the best sound from the cello. Each instrument is different in terms of miking. So if you want to use one of the regular mics, make sure you have a long cord. I recommend 10-foot long cords for both the headphones and for the microphone. So you have freedom to move around your studio. I have different configurations depending on whether I'm playing cello or theremin or viola or bagpipes, but all of which I play on Jamulus. And my setup is different for all of them. Okay, but because of the long cables, I can do that. Hopefully that helps. Stephanie, did I answer your question, Henri?
Yeah, I use a
Yes,
close
very much so.
mic too.
Heel goed.
Ja, bedankt hoor.
Niet te danken. Okay, Stephanie.
Well, I was just gonna say that I also use one of those. I don't use a pickup, you know, one that goes in the bridge. But I happen to already have one of those little Danish Pro Audio little mics that you have a little thing and it sticks and it hovers over your bridge, and it works great. And it's having problems recently, but I have an audio box with 2 inputs, 2 mics.
Right.
And when I play bass quintets with Tom and Mike here, my boyfriend who's a bassist, we're both playing and we have an individual volume control. So if any of you guys are in a couple and you want to try that, you can also do that. But if you don't want to get too fancy, you could also just have a room mic, no big deal. And in some ways it might be easier.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes when you have the mic on the bridge of a violin or a viola, right? And it's going to pick up differently from when you're playing from when you're talking, but they all work, okay? If you have a good quality mic. One thing about microphones is you want to get your instrument maybe between, Tom, what would you say, about 2 to 3 feet maximum from your mic, so then it will pick up decrescendos and crescendos and everything like that.
Well, not too
It
far away
varies.
because every foot of distance more or less is another millisecond of delay. That's the first thing. I haven't done as much experimenting or research into mic placement, so I'm not too up on that.
Yeah, but for string players, think where your sound is coming from and look it up on YouTube. There's going to be videos how to mic a violin. There were at least 3 to 5 videos on how to mic a cello. That helped me figure out my placement and my angle so my sound picks up. Stephanie, what's our next question? I know we've been online for a while. I'll keep going as long as people want.
A couple more things in the chat, but since you were talking about miking instruments, I think I saw something from Wayne King about,
Okay.
he was asking, it seems like he's a brass player, unless I'm remembering this. I don't know, Wayne, if you're there, if you want to unmute.
Yes, yes.
You want to ask your question? Because brass is a whole other.
Yeah. What do you play?
Trumpet.
Okay.
So yes, I was asking, I don't have an audio interface, and I was wondering if there were any brass players that could recommend something they may have. Doesn't sound like it.
No, but what I would suggest, if you're interested in that, first of all, I would do some basic internet research, take it with a grain of salt. I would do 2 things. I would do that, and then I would call up Sweetwater and I would talk to one of those folks, because I spoke to them about what the best microphone is for a cello that they would recommend. Tom did the same for violin. We have slightly different microphones. I've got a small cardioid condenser mic. Tom has a large cardioid condenser mic. It depends on the timbre. And for trumpet, of course, you're going to have, the issue of sound. I mean, in terms of nuance and everything else, and how close you want to be before you blow everybody's, if it gets too loud, right? But I would look that up, and I would call the Sweetwater folks and ask them for suggestions. They will give you suggestions. That's why I like talking to them.
Okay, thank you.
Says AT 2020 plus USB and ask Sweetwater. I don't know what that means.
Ooh.
But that's in the chat.
Okay.
We have another question. We have a question from Dwight. Dwight, would you like to unmute?
Sure. It's really part of an answer. I play French horn, and
Cool.
it's really remarkable how much better it sounds if you put the mic right in the bell, practically. You're sitting, so you're not moving around.
Right.
And what you said about decrescendos, really noticeable. I've been using a digital audio workstation recording duets and more larger groups. And it really changes the nuance entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mic.
You're right. So you're using one of those mics that clip onto the bell, I think, right?
No, it's actually a mic on a stand that I just put next to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So,
from the bell is good.
yeah. And you can control your sound and everything else, right?
Sure, because you hear it right away, and you can, yes.
Terrific. Where are you located?
In New Hampshire, near Hanover.
That's doable. Okay. We'll keep that in mind.
Okay, give a call.
Yeah.
Actually, that might be an interesting thing for me to do, is to write people and ask for people's mic suggestions. Because if various instruments have different suggestions and setups, I could put something on the website about that.
Yeah. By the way, there are also for Jamulus, they do have a list of recommended or equipment that is known to work with Jamulus. They have that online. It's not complete, and it hasn't been updated in at least 9 to 10 months. But it's kind of a guide a little bit if you're asking about a particular kind of equipment or some equipment that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You might want to look at that. But by now there are lots of folks online that have been using the stuff and have a lot of experience. Yeah, I mean, Dwight, that's very helpful to know about what your experience is with the horn. Okay. Hey, Tom, I think Tom's picture went away. I don't know why.
Let's take it a break. Michael Haddad had his hand up earlier.
Go ahead.
And just put something in the comment. Michael, do you want to talk about your?
Okay, all right. The earlier comment was just on SoundJack, which is, while I haven't used it, my understanding is it runs on the peer-to-peer technologies of the 90s and finds a way around latency rather than work via servers that are very fast. So it's quite a different technology and probably worth looking at. But now I have put a comment in because if people are interested in researching mics and pickups for bowed stringed instruments, cellist Jacob Zekkeli has a remarkable website called thepickuptest.com. I put the URL in there, where he actually demos one for one with some high fidelity comparisons, and you can actually change off what's being shown to see what you think might work for you. It's extremely comprehensive. I think to get anywhere deep in it requires probably a $15 subscription, but it's more than worth it for the remarkable stuff he does.
Sure. Do you know what the cost of his mic setup is? Because some of those high-end mic pickups can be, I've seen them for $800 or more.
No, he goes from the inexpensive all the way to the DPA.
Yeah, that would be great. Stephanie, if there's stuff like that in the chat, is there a way to capture that and send some of these things out?
I'm going to copy the chat before I end the meeting. I've never done that before, so I hope I don't fail. But I just saw a comment from Leon about the Bartlett and the Bartlett.
Yes.
And I actually have tested those too, and I have to say they're on my list. I'm going to be putting them up to if I can. But I have a,
Here's my Bartlett.
Okay.
I have a DPA. I bought a DPA something like 15 years ago. Something. I'm a professional violist, and I needed it professionally, so I bought it. This is before Bartlett existed. But a friend of mine told me about the Bartlett, and I went into a recording studio with the rest of my quartet, and we backed and forthed and tested them. And the Bartlett is as good as a DPA. The only difference is it's slightly more sensitive. So what we did is we bought them 3 Bartletts, and I have my DPA. And when we do things that need to be amplified, we have a set. But a Bartlett is about 1/3 of the price of a DPA, and it is a fabulous mic, and it's a small and awesome mic. Just want to say that.
Yeah. Well, you know, if that's something I don't know about. I'd be interested at least in checking that out just for information purposes. By the way, we had one question. Hey, Tom, I think your video just went out. I assume you're back. Okay, we had one quick question I wanted that I saw flash. I want to do that before our next one, Stephanie, and that was about Linux. Okay, so Jamulus works on Mac, Windows, and Linux computers. Now, as it turns out, I actually am now running Jamulus off of a very tiny computer called a Raspberry Pi. It's a $100 computer that looks like a keyboard, okay? You can't really see it. It's kind of to my side over here. Let me see if I can lift it up. This is the computer, and it's attached to a standalone monitor that I have here, a very small monitor. And it works on Linux. That's what it runs off of. And the only reason I have it is because it was highly recommended to me by another violinist with whom I play, and she was able to send me the code. It takes a little bit to set up for Jamulus and everything else. And I basically robotically will know how to update Jamulus. I'm not a programmer, and that is more of a programming computer, but it works on it and it works extraordinarily well. I'm getting routinely latency. I'm shaving about 10 milliseconds off my latencies using the Raspberry Pi with my Focusrite versus using Windows. There's a small community of folks that know how to use this Linux Raspberry Pi things. And I made sure she sent me the violinist sent me the info, the expert that knows the code. And she helped me set it up. So we're going to get a little, Linux Mind Hive thing, at least a go-to people. And of course, on the Jamulus sourceforge.net, that's sourceforge.net Jamulus website, right? There's all sorts of expert forums and Q&As. I've got a Q&A up there where they helped me initially back in May. And they've got all sorts of experts that know about Linux as well. So
I think
Stephanie,
also, Mike, the most, if not all of the servers, I think also run Linux. So if you're going to set up a server, it helps to know at least a little bit of the language when you do it. Recording.
Yeah, I mean that's the upload. That's even beyond my technical expertise. I will tell you, and then I'll turn it over to Stephanie for the next question. When I started this back in May, back last April, or back in March when all this was starting, I had no idea what an audio interface was. I had no idea about sound settings. I had no idea about any of this. But you learn because you want to play. And so I often said at the very beginning, a lot of folks know that, I've been quoted, I had no knowledge. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So, don't be intimidated by all this stuff if you're not up to tech. There are folks that can help. And there's a lot of users on who can give guidance. Stephanie.
Yeah, before we pass it on to Henri for his next question, I just want to say that for those of you that don't know, for those ACMP members, we have a password protected for security purposes technology task force page, and it's in that left menu on the website, the explore menu. Just sort of scroll down, technology task force. If you're logged in, it'll show up. And one of the people that's recently joined the technology task force, and she knows about both Jam-Kazam and Jamulus, so she's in both lists, is Sylvia Rubin. And I added a note there saying she can also help you with Raspberry Pis. And she sent me a sketch of an article she wrote about it, and I read it, and I was like, oh God, I have to talk to her because I don't understand it. I can't exactly put it up on the website because I have no idea what it means. But she's out there and she helped Mike set up. So if you're, I saw that Jane is interested. Yep. If you're interested in Raspberry Pi, send a note to Sylvia and she'd be happy to help you.
Yeah, Sylvia was great. And actually she was the one who actually was able to send me the basically programming code in a file and walked me through setting it up on my Pi. She can do that. That's not something I'm comfortable with, but there's also an expert Jamulus user in, I think it's someplace in the Southwest. She told me the name of the person just for reference. Yeah, it's Sylvia Rubin, R-U-B-I-N. So she's she's at ACMP.
Yeah, and she's on the technology task force.
Yeah, and I'm glad she joined because then she knows all this stuff. There was a question I just saw flash by saying, if you have 4 people on Jamulus playing like a string quartet or something, what do you do to adjust your sound? Okay, so a couple of things. You have the sound that you make going into the server. And you set that up on your own computer with your sounds, your sound settings, the volume that your mic is going to be and the volume of your headphones, or you set it up on your audio interface. Then when the sound comes back to you through the server, you may hear some people louder or softer. You have to balance that. You notice that on top of Stephanie's name in the Jamulus gray box, there is a slider up and down. So you adjust that for every musician to see who should be louder or softer. So for example, in the viola quintets, I definitely want to hear the violins a bit more. For some reason, Tom, the violas are coming through a little bit louder. So I turn their sliders down a little bit sometimes, but sometimes I turn them up. and sometimes I turn the violins up and I turn myself down. So it's an individual thing. That's something you get very, very used to. Last night, for example, we played piano trios, and I needed to hear more of Tom. So he was playing violin. So I turned his slider up, turned mine down a little bit, and I turned the pianist up a little bit. So, you adjust your own mix when you're in Jamulus.
And this is something that, like it says at the top of the window, personal mix, those sliders only affect what you yourself hear. It has nothing to do with what anybody else hears, just
Right.
to be aware of.
But so just so you know, in terms of the audio sound, you set your own sound going in, and then you set everybody else's sound coming back. Stephanie?
We have a question now. By the way, Henri had to leave, but I think you probably answered this question. We now have a question from Wanda. Wanda, would you like to unmute?
Hi, I was just wondering, can you use a USB mic like a Blue Yeti that is supposed to have low latency, but...
Okay. Blue Yetis have been discussed in terms of being used on Jamulus. I will say one thing, and there are folks that do use USB mics. For example, if they're attaching directly to a computer, I assume that's what you're talking about, directly to a Mac or a Windows computer. The critical thing about Jamulus, again, in terms of low latency audio processing, various types of audio applications have sample rates where they sample an audio sound so many times per second. All right, so you'll have I think that, for example, most webcams will sample audio at 32,000 megahertz. Jamulus, most CD audio is at 44.1 kilohertz. I'm sorry, KHZ, kilohertz. 44.1 kilohertz. Zoom is at about 32, 33. Jamulus must be 48. That is a requirement for Jamulus at any microphone. That sample sound will sample it at 48,000 times a second, 48 kilohertz. Now, so you have to look up mic specs, and I've actually looked up mic specs to see what works. There are discussions about that on the Jamulus website. I don't know specifically about the Blue Yeti. It's something you'd have to see, but it's something called sample rate. Sample rate has to be at 48 KHZ, not 44.1. It will not work otherwise. Okay.
Yeah. If you're using something like the Focusrite interface, you cannot plug in a USB mic. You have to plug in what's called an XLR connection mic. So that's important to remember.
Okay. What is an XLR connection? Let me untangle my wires. Okay, so this is an XLR cable. This is what plugs into audio interfaces. Okay, so a USB mic will plug into a USB port on a computer. One of our violinist friends does use a USB mic that he got from 25 bucks off of eBay. It works very well. And he's not using an interface, he's using a Windows PC. He doesn't have as much control over his sound as some of the rest of us do using these audio interfaces. But it works very well. He's a professional violinist and he's one of our regular string quintet members. So check your mic specs, 48 KHZ or 48,000. Okay, so hopefully that helps. And remember that Jamulus is going to have to recognize that microphone, and you'll have to do that in your setup. Okay.
Thanks. That's great.
Okay, Stephanie.
Speaking of which, I saw a note from Lynn von Meter in the chat. I don't know if Lynn is still here, but just about condenser mics, 48 volt phantom power. That's an important thing.
Okay.
If you're using one of those little mics like the Bartlett or the DPA or whatever, some of those mics require phantom power, and those audio boxes, I don't know about the Scarlett Focusrite, but
it does.
Most of them have that. So if you go on, let's say this is all new to you and you go on and no one can hear you, there might be a little button and it might either say 48V or it might say phantom power. You have to press that.
Yeah.
Mic work.
Yeah, yeah. So for example, a USB microphone is going to get its power from the USB socket itself through the computer. But a microphone such as what I have gets its power through what they call that phantom power. It's an extra electrical a charge that comes from the audio box. So the Focusrite, I have a 48V, trust me, I don't have it on right now, but it's a 48V button for phantom power. And if it's not lit bright red, it's not on. Okay, so I have to make sure that that's on for my microphone to sound. Okay, and I'll bet, I don't know, but that just about every audio box that you're going to get, that you would get, a PreSonus and a Focusrite. Stephanie, what do you have for a box?
I have the USB, whatever it's called. I don't have it here with me.
Okay, but
something USB 96.
Probably PreSonus.
Yeah, it is PreSonus.
Yeah, right. PreSonus. So you have a 48V phantom power, right? And then the Behringer. There are Behringer boxes out there that work. Not all of them will work. I don't have personal experience with them. There is some discussion on the sourceforge.net website about Behringer audio interfaces. So you have to, ask Sweetwater. I think that's right. Thanks, Jane. I just saw that in the chat. Okay, and by the way, with all of the audio boxes, if you're interested in audio interfaces, they will all come with their own downloadable software. So the Focusrite does, the PreSonus does, the Behringer does, and they all have ASIO or audio stream in-out software attached to their controls, so that when you use those boxes, you're using their proprietary low latency audio software that will basically override for Windows, for example, the Realtek or the not suitable sound cards. Stephanie, what's next?
It doesn't look like we have any more questions unless you see something in the chat.
Okay, let me look quickly at the chat.
Or if anyone wants to speak up, if there's something that hasn't been covered. We're only 41 now. So
yeah,
total, this is like an intimate gathering now.
Yeah, hey, we could have a choral session on one of the vocal rev servers. Okay, I'm just quickly going down. Let's see, to see if there. Yeah, there was a question earlier about, depending on the model of laptop, you may need something like a Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter in addition to the Ethernet cable. Yeah, okay, so the connections to your own PC or laptop are individual, depending on your laptop. Most of them come with USB ports. Some of them nowadays are coming with USB-C ports. So any of the major houses, Sweetwater certainly has, Guitar Center should have, Amazon's going to have, they'll have converters, for example, so you can plug in Ethernet into a USB-C and all the rest of that stuff. All depends on your setup. It doesn't matter who your internet provider is, not really, unless it's really slow. Okay, let's see what else we got.
Amazon Basics, by the way, I have a Mac and it has just the USB-C. Amazon Basics has something, I think it was 10 or 15 bucks, and it's a little hub. So I have a little doodad with like 7 USB inputs that goes into my computer. So if you have that situation, I highly recommend that.
Yeah. One comment I saw earlier on from a cellist, Val Matthews. I don't know if Val's still on. That for headphones, wired earbuds work too. As a cellist, I find over-the-ear headphones bump into the peg box, so prefer earbuds. Route the cables down my back. I'm a cellist, and I use, as you can see, studio headphones. I kind of reverse them so that the cable coming out of it is this way and goes under my bow arm. If I do it the other way, yes, it bumps into my.
I do the same thing as a violin/violist to switch the phones around to the cables on the right side.
I mean, the reason you want to use these kinds of headphones is that you'll get a better sound of everybody coming in than just earbuds. And when you do this, if you get the closed back, I've got semi-closed back studio, you don't hear anything outside of what's coming in through the headphones. So you don't hear even your own sound when you're playing. And you want that. You want to hear what's coming back from the server. So I'm just looking quickly down the chat unless somebody's got a question. Let me just see.
Anyone can pick up too at this point, since we're,
Yeah, please speak up. I'll just keep on. If I just download Jamulus, does that solve anything? What is the minimum amount I can spend to play with a little less delay? Depends on your equipment, right? Let's see. Depends on your equipment. The Macs, a lot of folks are playing just on their Macs. For Windows, it's a little more challenging. You can play, but we have all found it's better with audio interfaces. Basically, the total cost, if you get an audio interface, it's about $110. If you get a reasonable microphone, it's another $99. Then you need the cables and these headphones. You don't have to go nuts. These were $60. You can get them sometimes for below 50. You don't have to kill yourself on the cost.
Mike, one or two people are asking about buffers. I don't know if that's getting too too technical.
Yeah. Okay. Some of that gets very technical and you have to start looking at the Jamulus screen. I would suggest if you have questions about buffers that you separately message folks, or you can talk to one of the technology task force people to explain buffers to you and how to get the best sound. There's always a compromise on your speed and how fast your sound goes into Jamulus versus the sound quality crackling or not. The lowest buffers, for example, that are on the Jamulus settings that you can set might make your connection fast, but because of various vagaries of audio technology will give rise to a lot of crackling and pops. So it's a compromise. I suggest you ask one of the Jamulus Tech Task Force members about that. For example, there's some folks I know up in near Cape Cod. I'm going to be doing a Sherpa walkthrough with them of Jamulus tomorrow. And that's always one of the things that I discuss is the buffers. I mean, and what could be, what you play around with to get your best audio settings. Hopefully that helps. Other questions? I know
someone asked, Dan Brown asked about hearing aids. If you have hearing aids, obviously you can't use in-ear buds, but do headphones work with hearing aids?
I don't know.
Alan Firestone just answered me and said that they work fine. We just put them right over. Right, Alan?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously the over-the-ear headphones. I keep on wrapping them up. They've got.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm glad somebody's got experience with it. Thanks. Other questions?
I didn't.
Any answers?
Well,
Mike?
I have an answer for you. Everyone just get on Jamulus and look for Mike because he's always there.
No, I'm not. No, look for some other people too. I'm playing a lot nowadays. But all of us who have been on Jamulus for quite some time, I always tell somebody, if I get them onto Jamulus, I say, okay, in exchange for this, you are now a Jamulus appointed expert. You can help other people get online. And that's how we build up the Jamulus hive mind and reference. So there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And there are people that I will ask, for example, like Sylvia about the Raspberry Pi. Alan, you got a question?
Yeah. And this applies to Vivian also, who's up in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
When I connect to, I'm in just north of Albuquerque. When I connect to the servers, I get two servers with a ping time less than 50. One's in LA and the other one shows up sometimes and it doesn't say where it is.
Probably
so I went through setting up a server on my computer.
Yeah.
And we haven't tried playing on it yet because the only one that I've been playing with is in Seattle, and it doesn't make any sense for it to travel all the way back from Seattle to Albuquerque and back. So we pick a server in between, which is the LA one, and it works okay. But if I'm going to play with guys in Colorado and New Mexico, tell me more about why I can't use a server on my computer.
Well, you can try. Okay, I have one of our friends, Bruce, actually one of our co-authors on the manual. He set up a server on his own computer up in north of Boston. We tried to connect to it, and it was like 100 milliseconds overall delay. It just didn't work for some reason. I am not a server person. And by the way, Vivian, I did look, when we first spoke about this, I looked for servers near New Mexico, and yeah, I was finding Dallas and LA. Sorry, what are the ping times you're getting, the overall delay times to the LA server from where you are? Overall delay.
I think the overall delay was about 60 or so.
Okay, with 60, you can play. It's not going to be great, but you can play. That's what I'm getting to Chicago when I play with folks on the West Coast. Yeah, Tom.
Sometimes on the server list, if you look even at the top of the list, which is supposed to be short ping times, they're going to look high. But when you actually select it, the ping time seems lower. I think there was some bug. They might have fixed it. But, if try to go to the top of the list and pick one and see how it actually looks when you actually pick it with ping time, because sometimes I think it's wrong on the actual list.
Yeah, and by the way, the locations of the server sometimes may not be accurate. But I have an answer or a suggestion, because I did look in the Southwest. The Northeast, we got a lot of servers. The East Coast, we got a lot of servers. West Coast, a lot of servers. The middle of the country in the North is okay. Texas, you got Dallas. For the Southwest, you might want to consider, and I don't know if this would work, Tom, maybe you can comment, if you set up some kind of private server or even a public server that's equidistant, and I don't know how that works in terms of the geography and the connections, right?
Well,
between
Amazon,
yeah, go ahead.
If you look at the Amazon Web Services webpage, there's a list of locations. I don't think it's a huge number, but if you're lucky, you might find a location for a server which is not too far away from where you are.
I don't know whether it would be Denver or Salt Lake City or something. I don't know, but that might be a suggestion if you get kind of more of a concentration of people in the Southwest doing this stuff. West Coast is pretty easy, But Vivian, I did look for you.
I know. I still have it.
That was about half a year ago. So I think the closest thing to New Mexico, there's some servers in Dallas, but the servers change, the server lists change. They can change all the time. There are new servers popping up all the time. I haven't seen them before. Go ahead.
There's Denver and Iowa.
Yeah, and you would check those out and look at your ping times and overall delays. Sometimes it's your internet provider. Again, remember, where your internet provider connects to the internet. For me in Westchester, it's New Jersey. That's the closest. So what looks the closest may not actually work the best. You have to trial and error a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
And when you said you can find a server that you can rent, so should we look around here, like for one of the internet providers around here, and see if we can rent server space from them?
Well, the only one I know is Amazon Web Services, AWS, but then there's like Mike discovered this, it's called DigitalOcean, and they seem to be in New York City, and they do the Vocal Revolution servers. I'm not too familiar with the whole private server thing that much, though.
Yeah, I think Google may also operate some kind of web service. Again, this is beyond my realm. The other thing is, it is worth it to go onto maybe the sourceforge.net Jamulus FAQ and have a look for a discussion forum where you can pose that question. There'll be people from all over the world. See you, Jane. People from all over the world that will log into that, but somebody may be able to answer your question and what the best setup is for where your server choice is very limited.
If you just Google the word Jamulus, it's going to take you right. The top hit, I think, is the main page where you'll see a bunch of, a bunch of different topics. Like one of them is setting up a server.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the two of you, Alan and Vivian, I'm going to send an email introducing you to Phyllis Caden, who lives in Seattle, because she recommended a technician that she used to set up her server. And she said, even though he's in Seattle, he can help people set up servers elsewhere.
Right.
So,
and then I guess it's a question in terms of the servers. Are you going to set up your own private server to do this? Or does it make sense? I don't think the cost is, the Vocal Revolution folks told me that their servers cost $5 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so does it make sense to get more people? If there's folks in the Southwest are interested, does it make sense to set up some kind of more efficient server? Phoenix, Salt Lake, Flagstaff. There you go.
Even Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Albuquerque,
Yeah.
where other musicians could get on and meet. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out as ideas. Okay.
Los Alamos.
Excuse me.
Los Alamos.
Los Alamos. Hey, you got some rocket scientists there, right?
Yeah.
And there you go. Okay.
They all play.
Yeah. Well, something, those are the kinds of folks with tech background expertise and maybe some incentive that can find a solution to that. Okay. All right. Stephanie, what else we got?
I think that's pretty much it, unless someone's got something pressing.
Yeah, do we have anything else on the chat? Let's see. Talk about buffer, yeah. Well, like I say, once you get onto Jamulus, what I suggest is you talk to one of the, if you want a tour, talk to one of the Tech Force task members once you're connected to guide you through some of the screens and maybe do a first playing session. I'm doing that for some folks tomorrow. Then you're kind of on your way. And then you get to look for musicians on the ACMP list. You get to ask around. So hopefully this has been useful. I know it's gone fairly long, but it's been a good conversation. So Stephanie, are we basically done?
I think we're basically done. I just want to remind you, once you are on Jamulus, if you can add that to your profile name so we can find each other. Because another thing you can do is just reach out to another ACMP person and say, hey, I'm trying Jamulus. Do you mind playing a duo with me? And just go and have fun and play around with it.
Yep.
And also a reminder, most of you know, but anyone who's interested in learning about JamKazam as well, we're doing it at the same time next week. And if it does sell out on Eventbrite, which it might, I was quite surprised. I'm going to ask, I'm going to see about organizing a couple more of these sessions for both platforms if it gets too full. It seems like there's more interest than anyone anticipated.
Yeah, but the bottom line, even if you think you're technologically challenged, it does work and there are people that can help.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, Stephanie, I didn't know about the JamKazam one. So that's next week as well?
It's next week at 2:00. And there's an event, again, you book it through Eventbrite. The link is in the last email I sent, and I'm going to send another one this week. Same sort of thing. Susan Alexander, who is the one that first reached out to me and sent me this guide that she made, she's going to talk about them, and the members of her quartet, including Val, who might still be here. Val is going to be there too. Maybe she's not here anymore. Yeah. So a couple members of her quartet are going to be there to answer questions as well. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. And I'm excited that so many of you are interested in this, and I want to play with you too. So I'm on it. Just look for ACMP Congas beginner level and you'll find me. And I really hope we can play together, and I hope some of you will get involved in the worldwide play-in, and anyone that wants to organize something, please do. And if no one organizes much, I'm going to organize some things. So, soon there's going to be information about that on the website.
Cool.
Okay.
I just want to thank everybody, and I'll see you all online, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
So long.